senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale, non è un'idea, innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire, non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli.
Sosteniamo le donne e gli uomini impegnati nello sviluppo delle imprese e delle attività professionali, con il desiderio di affrontare le sfide imprenditoriali, sociali e culturali del nostro tempo, contribuendo al bene comune. Compagnia delle Opere. Un criterio ideale. Un'amicizia operativa. Cdo.org.
10 racconti di solidarietà e aiuto concreto. Storie ricche d'amore, riscatto, coraggio e cura. Storie di persone che donano e che ispirano a costruire una società inclusiva. Una mano a chi sostiene. Storie.
Religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale, non è un'idea, innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire, non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli.
Sosteniamo le donne e gli uomini impegnati nello sviluppo delle imprese e delle attività professionali, con il desiderio di affrontare le sfide imprenditoriali, sociali e culturali del nostro tempo, contribuendo al bene comune. Compagnia delle Opere. Un criterio ideale. Un'amicizia operativa. Cdo.org.
10 racconti di solidarietà e aiuto concreto. Storie ricche d'amore, riscatto, coraggio e cura. Storie di persone che donano e che ispirano a costruire una società inclusiva. Una mano a chi sostiene. Storie.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of ours with the title, Good Work is a Friendship That Builds. I'm Stefano Gheno. I'm the president of the Cdo Opere Sociali, and I've had the honor to moderate this meeting, which has the participation of many speakers who are very illustrious and interesting. So here with me is the Vice Minister of Work and Social Politics, Teresa Bellucci. Hello, thank you everyone, thank you for the invitation. Fernanda Campolina, who comes from Brazil, from Belo Horizonte. From the opera of Father Giussani, Silvia Caironi. She too comes from Brazil. From São Paolo, her work is called Aventura de costruir, Adventure of Building. And Emilio Innocenzi from Rome. As you'll soon recognize, and he's the president of Team Service, an important cooperative that works in the area of social support. And Samuele Marconcini, so this is the chief of the Cattolica business unit within Generali Insurance, particularly relevant for the third sector. And at the end, and I've left you for last, because I was in alphabetical order, Father Francesco Occhetta, who's a legal scholar, professor at the university, and secretary of the Fratelli Tutti Foundation, and professor at the Gregorian University. So the title wanted to be a bit provocative, even if, to say the truth, after the intervention we had this morning with the President, Mattarella, it feels like he's stolen a bit of our thunder, of the provocation. So to say good work, putting together this phrase, good and work and friendship, seems to me a move that's pretty intensive. So first of all, can there be a good work on the basis of the criteria that we've got? And so what's work got to do with friendship? In the modern epoch, in the 19th, 20th, 21st century, work was essentially a place of conflict. Certainly wasn't a place of friendship. The presentation of work was a bit place where the classes combated, fought. The interests were different, and each what was good for one was not for another. And so now we have maybe overcome this division or this vision, but it's not that things have become clearly better. So in the 21st century, maybe thinking that there could be a work that's good seems odd, really. It's people talk about the poor work, undignified work, quiet quitting, people retiring early. So it's hard to hear this spoken of. But this morning, the President, Mattarella, spoke to us of the friendship and of work according to a perspective that's very interesting, and which certainly to me, and I think for you guys as well, we're going to make it our own. First of all, he recalled that friendship is not, above all, a sentimental phenomenon. He did an important step when he said that in the post-war period, the most interesting expression in friendship, he cited three things: United Nations, the construction of a united Europe, and the Constitutional Assembly of Italy. People who, having very different visions of the world, who got together effectively to construct a, quote, new world. It's a rhetorical phrase, but it's very concrete. The other element, which he was citing this morning, President Mattarella said that friendship, along with friendship, there's solidarity, civil and social solidarity. So it's not by chance that we've invited the Vice Minister Bellucci, because she is the Minister of Work and Social Policy, but her area is the third sector, and so she's someone who is called into the executive to bring this, put this down to earth. And so I'm not going to steal any more time from our guests. There are 3 points that I'd like to propose to our to develop with these themes. Work as a task, a personal task, anthropological, I could say, and social. Work as a place of relations, because the first point of friendship on work is the fact that nobody works on their own and nobody works for themselves. You always work for someone. And then work as a place, as an environment where you can stay well, where you can be well or not well. So it's not the work that makes you be well or unwell there, it's the environment, usually. And so I'll pass the word over to Father Occhetta, who will say something to us. First of all, thank you for the invitation and for being here. I'd like to limit myself to this so provocative title. I'd like to hold on 3 roots that we could say that could relaunch the debate on work, that are linked also to the urgency of the big themes that we've got. These are often like sticking plasters on a wound that is still bleeding, and that it'll continue to do it if we don't deepen these 3 roots which nourish the theme of works. So a good work, said Aristotle, and also the Gospel of St. John, when he speaks of friendship, doesn't create paradise, but it does cover over hell, because for many of us, those who are fortunate enough to work do it, but they're not happy. Someone is unhappy, and many want to change work because to go into different conditions than what they've got. So we need to understand why a tired society that works how can it regenerate itself, and from where? So to launch the arrow off. So I'd like you, when you're shooting an arrow, you need to have some strength, and you need to go back to a past. Our past, the President of the Republic said, even the experience of friendship which the constituent members did, even coming from very different points of view, is that it's exactly like the period we're living, where some political cultures have come out that are very strongly differentiated, and so we need to to link the two sides, the classical works, the classical work, like the ones that are paid, guaranteed, and those that are born without guarantees. A lot of young people take many years to get to a decent salary, because the problem is just work. And to understand what is just work, Schultz was saying the same thing yesterday. The question to ask in our country is the just work. So the constituents in the Articles 1 and 4, they said two things. Article 1 of the Constitution, that instead of the word workers, they put the word work, because work is like an exodus for them. It's something that a society needs to continue to update, because it's the destiny, John Giussani would said, towards which we go. So in our life, our time, we can work consumes like 3/4 of our time, and so we can't waste this time. We need to say this truly, even in front of our conscience, and to the generations who are bringing up. We can't waste this time, and we need to pass on something worthwhile. And so what I want to say is that it's fundamental. What today is Article 4 of the Constitution, which recalls that we concur in the material and spiritual development of the country. This spiritual dimension, which isn't the religious dimension, it's not religious practice, but is that dimension which makes you find again your dreams, strength to stay together, the conditions that friendship gives, and which are like gratuitousness, trust in the other, saying well of the other, even at work, and to enhance alongside the competences we have today, the skills we have, which make many conflicts come out, to make esteem up for the other person come out. There's difficult things. I work like you, but we don't have another choice. Or either we'll continue to live the current paradigm, or we need to try to construct a new paradigm. So what's it mean to pick up this spiritual dimension of work, the social dimension? So spirituality, if you go to read Mortati on the debate about Article 4, he said that the principle of work, we can only define it in relation to the items that the constituents gave themselves, these dimensions, the personal, democratic, and a third one. So we need to define these three principles, because if we don't do this cultural and anthropological work, then even political debates will become messed up. But if we go back over the heredity, the inheritance that we've got, then we can synthesize a couple of points. But I'll finish with two numbers and a conclusion. The data that we've got about work say that 65% of primary school children will do a job that doesn't exist today, that we don't recognize now. And this, we clearly need to be open to this, but if we aren't spiritually open to it, then it'll be difficult for us to welcome what needs to be born and to give it space, because the plant needs to flourish. And also, 1 worker in 10 is an immigrant, and out of 4 workers, almost 3 are at pensionable age. So on this, a young person who finished their studies, to get into the world of work with a decent salary needs about 3 years. So people delay their choices to make a family, etc. And if it's a woman, then at 33 years, typically a woman might have a child. And before they might have done it much earlier. So now, women, the age of being a woman is almost that of grandparents 100 years ago. So work touches a whole series of points that we recall in our living. So what I wanted to hand over to you is from this Article 4 of the Constitution, the title we gave 3 concrete words: alliance, and so I see, and conflict. So many people, we only bring them together with alliances, and even at a social and personal events. Otherwise, young people won't enter the work even unless they have a spiritual reason to do so, to construct the country. And the dream is that. The second world is participation in work, and thus there's a whole anthropology around this, which comes from what comes from above, what comes from across. The participative processes change the face of work, and the other one that I want to leave you is what work is for me. It's that the spiritual dimension which reactivates me, which gives me dreams, motivation, and also great love, as Giussani said, which lets you work. It's not just our own society, but also our future. Thank you. Thank you. You were really rapid, but I'd like to say very, very intense, let's say. Thank you. So this theme of the alliance and participation and love, I think they are an element that is fundamental in the experience that now we'll hear from. These are really characterized by attempts to put in concrete terms these words, and in some measure to try to realize the organizational challenge of not considering these things as abstract values, but as principles of how things and organizations can work, can function. So I'll ask Samuele to talk. Let's start with Samuele Marconcini, who seemingly, his might be that one that seems to be further from the reality, but these elements, these sort of foundational elements, like Father Occhetta said, aren't property of a single sector, but they can have a space in all. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invite here and here to the meeting, and to have the opportunity to talk about two topics which, as you said, they can seem like an oxymoron, that is work and friendship. So I'd like to start from a small extract from the Passion of Christ, in which we hear in the Garden of Gethsemane how when Jesus encounters Judas, and he's already aware of Judas's betrayal, he calls him friend. He calls him friend. Friend is someone you wish well to, someone you like. So why does he call him friend, even though he knows he's aware of his betrayal? So Jesus activates his mercy in this, my brief talk here. I'd like to kind of upgrade mercy, if that's possible. So to understand why mercy needs to guide our actions. So friendship can't be developed without relationships. Relationships comes from the verb referre, that is to build connections. So these connections, I believe, are the antidote nowadays against loneliness, against sadness, against depression. So, but what kind of connections am I talking about? Because there's many cases we hear of in our day by day which can relate to this. For example, social networks, social media. There are networks within this. There are webs. So think about this. These networks, we can access them by basically just asking for what? Friendship. By making friend requests. So this becomes true friendship. So I don't really have the answer to this, but I'd ask Pope Francis for the answer, who in the last synod spoke about 3 important behaviors which we should all activate, which are the encounter, discerning, and listening. So he gives us some very clear indications here on our personal lives and also our professional lives. It sounds like he's saying less emails and more encounters, more listening, and trying to understand the point of view of others, even if it's completely different from our own. You spoke earlier about teamwork. I think in businesses, all of this becomes very clear when we work as a team, and it becomes clear that if a team is well led, well organized, the results are excellent. And bear in mind that the more team members understand each other, the more results get even better, more their output gets. And you only have to activate a system of values to do this: honesty, reality, friendship, to build this team spirit. Within our business unit called Cattolica, it's dedicated to two specific worlds: one, the anti-religious people, and two, the third sector. We can do all of this because we have some common values. We can't handle these values if we're not in sync. So what does it mean that the president spoke about this morning? All of this gives sense to our actions, both in business and as individuals. So I'd like to put another element for reflection by quoting a French author and philosopher who was an atheist, Edgar Morin, who, speaking about relationships, said that everything that doesn't regenerate degenerates. So if our relationships are coddled, aren't nourished, they degenerate. So going back to our Garden of Gethsemane example, so our concept of friendship is so different to the concept of friendship. Is it so different, our concept, to that of Jesus 2,000 years ago? So why not? Because we have to look at a few more elements of behavior. So for example, situations of tension, an unexpected phone call brings unity, brings closeness. A whispered piece of advice brings unity, brings loyalty. Some feedback, as we call it, a sincere piece of feedback creates closeness. And it also is a fertile piece of terrain in which we can generate friendships. So we have two important foundations. Generali has this foundation called Eumanfesinet, which was born to work on the development of human potential. And then we have a foundation called Cattolica, the Cattolica Foundation, which works in near Verona. It works with third sector entities, and does this by doing what? By trying to build some certain projects which have common cultural themes, and all aim at third sector entities, we aim at sustainability, to let these third sector, these NGOs help themselves, sustain themselves. So I'll say something that might seem revolutionary as a conclusion, but since Mattarella said it, I'd say at this point we can probably say it. We need a new kind of humanism. Why do I say this? It can seem evolutionary. A new humanism means a desire to understand, a desire for knowledge when regarding others in a very sincere manner and without prejudices. This makes us feel free. And the desire for knowledge, for understanding, brings us to the truth. And the truth, as our Lord said over 2,000 years ago, the truth will always set us more free. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Samuele Marconcini, for your intervention here. Before starting our talk with some of the other panelists here, you've had the possibility to see the exhibition, and those of you who haven't already seen it, I'm going to force you to go and see it before you leave the meeting. Alone, I'm not enough on my own. It's a very interesting exhibition that three business partners of Opere Sociali, of three different entities, set up together. It deals with education, the education of young people, but in a very different manner and referring to very different worlds, because Portofranco is a network of help for studying, so it refers to young kids who study. Piazza dei Mestieri is a different reality which does many things, but particularly on the professional training in preparedness for work. And Kairos is a network which welcomes young people, mostly young people with that are undergoing trials, legal trials. So people who deal with other things in their lives. So in the video we saw together, I was struck at a certain point because one of these young people who's interviewed as part of the video, he said something that you said as well, Samuele. So you could probably hire him as your CEO now in your business. Because he said exactly this: a true friend tells you the truth, even when it's a painful truth. Among us, we call each other brothers, but then everyone lets you do whatever you want, even when you're wrong. So I think this is a very important point. This same kid that we saw in the video, the other day he took part in an encounter here I had the privilege to moderate, and at a certain point, there was this teacher, a very famous educator, he was proposing a way for young kids to stay together. He said, well, you adults, you need to listen to us, because if you don't listen to us, you say some things that have nothing to do with our questions. You know, this is a young guy who's working in a community in a juvenile detention center. Silvia Caironi, in Brazil, how does this thing work? How is it working? So, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Stefano and the organizers of the meeting for this gaze, which it reaches so far as to reach us in Brazil. I studied in Italy. I worked most of my life abroad in the USA, in Peru, and I've been in Brazil for the past 13 years, where I came by the invitation of a Milanese foundation to found an NGO, which is Aventura de costruir. We offer services to micro businesses that are highly vulnerable and are low yield, specifically in the peripheries of São Paulo. And with the pandemic, our work began to move online as well. And as such, we're now working in all of Brazil. What do? We offer consultancy, advice, access to microcredits, and also capital. I'd like to show you all a very brief video to understand our reality. Mission to sustain personal growth and socio-economic transformation, promoting territorial development and inclusivity. Where we operate. Our method, a few points. Number one, starting from reality. Number two, generating protagonism, starting from the centrality of the person. Working with a G-local vision. Operating in networks, building bridges and helping work that is conducted together with our beneficiaries. I'm very happy and that we've built a companionship between people here, starting from our story and building a connection which never goes away. We work together to solve our problems. We value and give responsibility to our people in a way that they obtain tools that they can use to build their own businesses. Without waiting for the world to change, we can start to change some small things together. Working is to change reality and to show that we are here, that we exist. Good, so after this quick premise here, I'd like to answer to a question. What does it mean to live this inexhaustible friendship with micro businesses, with families, with migrants, these kinds of people we work with and that we train? I'll explain this through a couple of points. First of all, I was very struck when I heard Padre Occhetta a day when he was explaining what social friendship means. Social friendship is part of the DNA of Aventura de Costruir. That is, that it sits at the roots of our foundation, and it's with our Brazilian partners, as well as with the foundation that invited me to start this work in Brazil. So it's part of our governance program. So what does it mean? That we go from an internal to an external dimension, not a kind of obvious dimension to take for granted, but it's the fruit of work. So of what kind of work is it the fruit of? I think it's a phrase, I think about a phrase that Pope Francis cited at the World Youth Day recently, in which he said to the young people, don't be the administrator of fears, but the entrepreneurs of dreams. And the way in which we work with entrepreneurs, with business people, is like this. These are people with huge dreams, but we need to give them a concrete path to follow so that these dreams can become a reality. So all of our integrated training, all the work we do within our projects, is always oriented to allow these dreams to become a reality. Secondly, friendship with the need for the human heart. So after a week of a meeting on this topic, what does it mean that what does friendship have to do with existence, and why is it inexhaustible? I'm struck when I see the business people we work with, that they realize that we're talking about something that has to do with their lives. It doesn't have to do with a small aspect of their lives, but with all of it. And it's exhaustible because there's an origin from which it's born. That work that we do with them, so that they can always be more aware of what should drive them, of what that's present in one who was killed by the local mafia last year. She has 8 children and 15 nephews. She works in recycling, and after 6 months that we worked with her, one day while she was crying, and she told me and someone else who accompanied her in these 6 months, she told us, "You guys have taught me how to work with my clients, with my providers, with my suppliers. I realized that I couldn't treat my children and my husband that I wanted to divorce. I couldn't treat them any differently than in the way that you guys have taught me to treat my clients and my suppliers." So this doesn't happen in an automatic fashion. It happens through a relationship, a link, which is generated in time, and that implies a level of trust. In this sense, I'd like to make my third point, and that's trust as an essential factor to build in building. A phrase from the religious sense has always struck me, where Don Giussani says that the most human, strongly human man is he who bets on trust. And I've always asked myself, what does he mean in these 13 years, building a relationship with the people I work with? There's not very many of us, about 15. What does it mean to build a relationship of trust with the people of our governance team and with our micro businesses? I understand that it's got a lot to do with this aspect of betting on them, of betting that the project they've got is worthwhile. And so what does it mean that this becomes concrete, becomes real? I'd like to use another example here of a mother with an autistic son that I met in 2018. And I remember the course she took part in, and honestly, I would never have bet much on her, to be honest, but I was struck the tenacity and how systematic she was in always coming to our training sessions, first in person and then online with the pandemic came. She built an editorial, a publishing house, and now her husband works there along with others. Her autistic son tells stories and she writes them. He designs these stories and makes drawings, and now they're publishing books of other special people in all of Brazil, and is translating them, and are now translating and exporting them to an English market. And this is an experience which fills us with hope for someone who saw a limit as an opportunity. And this was possible thanks to this having trust in her. A fourth factor is the careful and passionate observation of reality. Why do I say this? So as you were able to see in the video, for us, starting from reality is an absolutely important part of our methodology, and something that has always struck me with of the people who work with us is that many of them aren't Catholic, and yet we hear them say, we've got to see our micro businesses, we've got to help each other start from reality. We can't build if we don't start from what already exists. And reality is also the dreams we have. So to have these dreams, it's necessary to have this passionate observation of reality. Another point I'd like to comment on is correcting errors. This struck me a lot when I visited the Da Solo Non Basto exhibition, when they talk about correction. So bear in mind that in Latin America, in Brazil, we've got a very different culture, and to speak of correction, of errors, it's the furthest thing you could do from our mentality, from the reality of what we live in Latin America. So I was struck that in order to be able to look at mistakes, there needs to be an aspect, like we said. I'd like to quote a sentence from Don Giussani that refers to the mercy we were talking about, that he says, in the end, what destroys my fear? Being possessed. So usually we're so obsessed with not failing. I don't want to fail, don't want to make a mistake because I'm afraid. And so life becomes smaller, it shrinks. Not to fail, and therefore to not know my limits. Recently I went to meet a financer of micro businesses in the US. He's a Peruvian who participated with us in a training program, and there was also a famous Venezuelan chef in this program, and he asked Manuel, so if you had to give yourself a score from 0 to 10, what would you give yourself? And he said, well, 4. Well, yeah. I said, well, yeah, because you did the course. Otherwise, you would have been a 2. Well, what a great valuer you are here. So he was an extremely interesting guy, because he prepared a business plan in which, because he studied topics related to maintenance, repair work, engineering, he prepared a business plan as if it was a recipe, given it was a culinary program, and all the steps and the ingredients of this business plan were described in this logic of the work that he would have offered. And it was one of the 9 winners of the SID Capital competition. And he said, it was Bruno who kept telling me, well, no, there's a mistake here. You need to change this. You need to improve this aspect. You need to redo this part. But I was struck the lightness, the easiness with which he described this correction. It wasn't a correction that happened among us people who work together, but a correction that can reach our beneficiaries, because we experience this embrace that begins to live, as Father Occhetta said, in the world of work, as we await paradise. Final point. The surprise of something that's unforeseen, gratitude. This is surprising because the beneficiaries of our projects are aware of what they've received, and they begin to understand that this needs to reach others as well. It needs to grow. So, for example, Diego, he works for an entity called Turismo Solidar. He said, bear in mind that 70% of families have debts and 30% aren't able to pay their bills at the end of the month. He said, after I learned how to manage my finances, I went to my parents and I taught them how to do it, because I knew that having received the training myself, I should give it to others, give back to the community. The final example, Cecilia, in a project that with businesses in biofoods, she was participating in this project because she wanted to bring the training that she'd learnt to other business people who don't have access to online training and who are spread out through all of Brazil. So you can see the kind of multiplication effect here that's so fundamental for our financiers. And this is it only happens if there's an I that changes and that reacts in different ways within its context.
Thank you, Cecilia. This last step on the idea of restitution, of giving back, which I think this gives a lot of points, and also this last hint, the relevance of the change of the I, which came to mind while I was thinking of it. We can give back only if you are aware of having received. So I fear that very often, instead, we've lost this awareness. We take it for granted. A whole series of things that, hearing to you guys, should not be taken for granted. Emilio, to cooperate is friendship by definition. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. I want to start to introduce the intervention with the video that we've done, given that we've done an exhibition here at the meeting that's called a task in the world, responsibility and dignity. So I wanted to start with this video. Can we start it off, please? Just a moment, and we'll soon get there with a moment of suspense, and here we go. Work, the organization at the service of the person. So working in this team service cooperative between 2001 and the pediatric hospital Bambin Gesù in Rome, there was like an experience of rebirth, a fundamental experience in my life, which I wrote about in a book. So it came, the word relationships also means effort, a shared effort to reach common objectives and humanity. Work for the human being shares life with various paradigms. It can be the most important setup of our life, of our passions, of our talents, or it could become that daily quota that we sacrifice of our time to survive. So I know people who earn a lot every month, and they live their work as a kind of sacrifice of suffering. Work becomes important when it's an extension of our vocation, of our talents, and when it puts us in contact with the world. I started working 25 years ago. It was an exciting journey because when I was growing up, I was different as a man. So I've become part of this company. It's like a great family where you feel at home. Team service was born from the initiative of a group of friends who had a need, which was that of work, which would let them to sustain themselves and their families. So inside this experience, daily are grown friendships and groups, so it's passed things on through the generations. All those who enter our company have the chance to form themselves and feel themselves part of a family. The challenges which we have in front of us are those that all of Europe has. So every day we seek to optimize our way to reduce troubles. So the idea of welfare, which sees us closer than before when we cooperated. So the other is that of governance. It's to optimize ever more these services for our clients. All these things, it's a team service. All this is our daily challenge, which we always want to but we always want to put the person at the center of what we do. Okay, Stefano. We could stop here. This really is an important testimony here. But let me try to say how this cooperation can become an enterprise for us, a business. I'll start from here. I concede to your servant, Lord, an understanding mind to govern your people with justice and be able to discern between good and evil. So this citation from the first book of Kings is the dialogue between Solomon and God, who appeared to him in a dream and asked him what he wanted, what would you like, and I'll give it to you. So what does Solomon ask for? He asks for wisdom. So let's say the question for me of how can collaboration become an enterprise is so that I may know right from wrong. Which, thinking of what great capacity we are called to have in the choices that we make. So this first aspect has characterized my entire life, all my life, as an entrepreneur for 40 years, as I've had to and still do every day, have to make the choice to invest in people. But how does this happen? How can it be born and become an enterprise? So I'd like to say three brief things. The exhibition that we've done at the meeting, really with the title, A Task in the World, Dignity, Work, Responsibility, is the summary that explains the three aspects that I would like to talk about and that involve each of us in our relationship with work. So the first point. So the point isn't that to make people loyal, as often I've seen within multinationals, and in fact I've never thought about it in all of the choices I've made in the organization, and all the choices I've done, and I never did it thinking that as it was a good way to make people stick to the company. So that was never the aim in my relationship with people. So I always put first what was said to us by Professor Giorgio Vittadini, a really great friend, at our conference many years ago. It was called The Sense of Work, the Meaning of Work. And a person can't have the concept of work thinking only of his or own brick. And the meaning of work, we could say, can't be limited to the responsibility for the task that I've been given, for which I'm paid, and for which I'm accountable. And even if the salary is a real part of a responsibility, the first responsibility in work is to feel an integral part of everyone's work. So the theme is not competition within the business or the forming of one versus the other. Let's talk really. But it is and becomes mutual help to build and sharing and cooperation on common objectives. So making everyone feel involved in the same project, one can then give 30 from 30, and who can give 60 gives 60. Who can give 100 gives that 100. But it's important that everyone gives all that they are able to give. So this is I think it's the first involvement of those who work to create an enterprise. This is what we're saying. The enterprise, you build it all together. Constructing together is like Pope Francis said in the conference, the national one we did. Second point then is from work to work. This is the title of a book that we did when we had the 25th anniversary of our cooperative, and soon we'll be doing the 40th. So if everybody's involved in creating an enterprise, then everyone's goal is to generate and create work. And this is exciting. Gives you enthusiasm. In these 40 years, it's like in Giussani's lovely song, which Silvia cited earlier, The Old Man and the Child. The ability to dream, because to dream serves to undertake to be an entrepreneur and to hope, as I said this morning, like the President said, and to look confidently to the future. this trust we're talking about. So this capacity of operation to generate and create work makes a fundamental difference in living one's own work as personal growth. This is the fundamental difference in building a business. A company is between taking or undertaking, where taking is like emptying out the company. That's really not our thing. And the other one is undertaking, which means generating work. And this is exciting. This gives you enthusiasm. And this aspect, when it belongs to you, makes you stay attached to that company. As the title of our meeting today says, good work is a friendship that builds. And when this happens, everyone feels part, as we said, Alessandro said, everyone feels part of what we're building. I'll give you two little figures from our company, Team Service. 65% of our employees and managers have been with the cooperative for over 20 years, 25 years. 70% of our employees, and there's about 5,000 of them in Italy, 70% are women. So we are well aware of the issue of reconciling work and family life. And we have corporate welfare programs that help and increase the well-being at work. The problem then, I think, is the ownership that's faceless, that ownership which you don't know who it is. With only, so clearly the enterprise has to make a profit, but when you only have the profit motive, this facelessness, at least in the past, there was the boss, the owner, and the worker. And there was the boss you could complain to or complain about, and you could combat the boss in front of you. Now there isn't this face of the boss, the owner. There isn't even that. Third point. So if the first point was a responsibility at work, the second point is generating work, the third point is, as an inevitable consequence is born from this, inevitable consequence, the person at the center of the company. So the center of the company is the person and the dignity of what he or she is and what they do. In our history, this is the centrality with which we have grown to become a national reality. I'd like to explain this concept further, because I think it's important. The company is the person, and without this, there is no growth. There's no business. This, in our history, has meant that those who are hired as workers, today, it's easy for them to become managers, and that is the beautiful thing about creating work. You can invest because one invests in the person, in the human assets that are there. Learning to do your job better is a fundamental thing, because working together, learning to do your job better, because it makes you passionate about it and what you do, and it makes you if you're passionate in your work, then you grow. You invest in this passion. So it's important to love your work. Before my eyes, it's like I was watching a film. I have people and faces that have been in the past and are now in the present. This possibility of investing in people and human assets. And this is what it makes it easy for me to distinguish between the good and the bad, and makes it easy for me to invest, even in for example, another thing, I've got these 30 seconds, please. A minute and 30 seconds. Okay. I'll say we're in the facility sector, and so to invest on the people, to invest on persons, it's very precise, the investment there, because we're doing, maybe you do it on the plastic, on the PNR, we're trying to look at the environment. Another one is in healthcare, in telemedicine, and the theme of the integration of social and healthcare. And the third one, in our sector, we've got like 45% of our people are foreigners from our 5,000, and they come from about 15 different ethnic groups. And I think today that the integration of migrants is a great opportunity if it is built on work. And we've done a new company, and for staff leasing, which helps us accompany them hiring migrants directly, and we call legal migrants, and accompanying them along the way. And this is the challenge that we do. Closing up, the business is the place where let me say this. We need to fight against workers' solitude. We need to fight that the work be for everyone. Certainly, we need to do it in such a way that the weakest classes, the weakest people, social classes, that we need to help them with distant work, but we mustn't construct a society, as you said, as Bellucci said, we must not construct a society where smart working is work. We mustn't be kidded, but that my work is solitary, is solitude, because solitude does not create work, as the President said. We want an industry that puts us together and creates work. So this is what it means to build an enterprise. I'll conclude with a question, a true question. How do we protect small and medium enterprises, and social ones are not? So they can be protected from the invasion of a morality where work is only profit. And this is another conference we need. We'll do another one. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emilio, for your passion. If you hadn't been in conflict with the boss in the midst of your intervention, you'd have stuck with the time. But you jumped onto that, and there we lost ourselves. Okay, Fernanda. Fernanda's the last witness here in this encounter of ours. She also comes from Brazil, and we have set up in Cdo Opere Sociali a few years ago, and it's going ahead with work in South America, or maybe 4 years in Brazil in particular, a journey that we call Opera Gemelli, which is a path of sharing of experiences and of reciprocal learning, mutual learning. Fernanda this year has brought to this moment that we did in Salvador de Bahia. She brought the experience that she was doing in her opera, in her work, which is that of operative friendship. So, Fernanda, please, can you tell us? Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. First, I'd like to thank you for the invitation, and I'm sorry, forgive my Italian. I'd like to start telling a bit of the story of our work, which is a group of institutions, social and educative, in the outskirts of Belo Horizonte in Brazil, which has as a mission to educate to beauty and helping families to become protagonists of the education of their own children. Many of you here know Rosetta Brambilla, this phrase that she used to say, that we live, the force, the strength of friendship is that which can change the world. The first nursery was born in 1968. So we welcome about 2,000 children and adolescents. We follow 860 families with 6 schools, six schools, a home for families, a sportive centre, and programs with the kids who've already left, and they come to do different activities with us and meetings. So our method is always starting from the person, with a gaze on the person, an attention to reality, doing for, with and not for, valuing the person, and only someone who's welcomed can welcome. So, for us, taking care of those who chair has never been just a strategy, it's been also because each one is important in their role at work. And when one is looked at like me, that has a richness inside you, that's him, that changes your way of working, also changes your whole life. And so for this, I've put here my story, because it's an example of this. I started working 23 years ago in a project of orthodontics, or dentistry. I'm a dentist by training. And we looked after the children and then parents, and then bit by bit, I got some other dentists came, and a great friendship was grew up with them. 2006, I went to meet this particular person, and at a certain time, she said to me, "Don't you want to help me in managing all of these works that we do?" And I'd also got my own private practice with some colleagues, and I replied, "Yeah, but I haven't studied to do this kind of thing." And she said, in the work you can learn by doing it, but I need a friend in whom I can trust. And she said, to help me. And there I straight away said yes. I said that, however, I'm not going to quit my work because I like being a dentist. Instead, 2 years later, I closed my practice and left everything to be in full-time work because this was part of me. I was part of that place. And so it corresponded to me more to be there. I was happy. On this, I wanted to underline this story, this history, because it's like this that we take care of the people who need to belong to that place. That place welcomes the people with everything that they have and are, without taking away anything. So our method is based on looking at the individual person, and all our activities are the chance for an encounter, whether it's with children, with bigger kids, with families, adolescents, but even with our co-workers, and in our educative environments. And this we say to everybody. So for a few examples, there are some days, like we call, one of the most important things that we do is when we restart working after the holiday period. And so we will call the retomar, which I tried to find an Italian word for it, but it would be like picking up again, and it's not that, but it's restart. So what we do there is a gesture that looks at each of our collaborators, co-workers, to remind them they are chosen, and they were called and chosen. Last year, we did a special day because Rosita went to the carnival. She went to do carnival with a friend who has this very nice place in Belo Horizonte, close by. And when she arrived, she said, "I want this place for all my friends." And imagine there's 190 of us collaborators. So even the logistics to get everybody to that place was an undertaking. But we said yes because we wanted that each of them could do an experience of beauty. And then we also prepared them for doing this experience, saying to them about the importance of silence, of putting your cell phones aside, and so that you can listen to nature, but also yourself. Because we live in a world that's full of noise, and we wanted that we would live that experience as only of beauty. As already Dostoevsky said, beauty will save the world. These are some photos of that day. And there's also some music at lunchtime. There's a pianist there. And after that walk, that day, we started it up again, really based on the experience of the beauty in our life. It was just giving this importance, and everybody said that in that moment they felt chosen and loved. And then we also do some meetings with the leaders, which happen once a week in the morning around a table. We'd have a nice breakfast together, which they seem like details, but it's important. It was Christ's method, and we underline this. Rosita always underlines this. So we also do pedagogical meetings with all the co-workers. And sorry, something I forgot to say to you, which is really important, that in the Het Tomada, all our workers are there, 190 of them, not just the educators or directors. There's the cleaning lady, the doormen, the doorkeepers, and the cooks, all up to the director and the teachers, because all of them are educators for us. And so there's some more examples of what we do. For example, we did at the end of the year of 2021, when there was still the pandemic, sometimes some groups came to work because they couldn't do children. The children weren't already back in the nursery, so we wanted to say how each one of them was important in their role, even if we were closed. And so Rosetta, together with Silvana, who'd been our cook for many years, they prepared a pudding, a dessert, with a message for each one of them, to make it, to say how much each one of them was important. And then a dinner with the cleaning ladies. You can see that it's all women here, practically. We have very few men in the company. And these people there, why? Because they, in our work, are always there to serve us. And so that dinner, that day together, they were served. And this is something very important, which can seem trivial, but it's not. This is a photo that we did after a massage for the cooks. And then all these things that we do that so those who do it are inside our work. So there's the responsible for our distance adoption system, who was doing like so she does massages for them instead of for outsiders. So that I'm there too, and Vanessa from the Directive Council, the directors, because it's usually us who propose these things. So they were very close to my heart, because they were also thought about for us, because we work there too. And the last one is something there in our sporting centre. There's much kind of empty time, we can say, because we were closed for 2 years, and then bit by bit the kids came back. But then the teacher, or the secretary, rather, let's say, she was also Professor of Physical Education. We started with her to propose gymnastics for all the workers who wanted to do it. And this started also to change their life in the sense of having friendships within work. And this is a bit of our work, because so those who want more to know us, we're very ready to receive you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you also to Fernanda. I have a question to do, but times are short, so I want to move on and hear Maria Teresa Bellucci about these things that have popped up. I'd really like to hear your contribution. One little thing. Samuele, your foundations, if we did a project of welfare in which there's a massage, would we propose a dinner to people? Do you think we could do a project like that? Is that thinkable? Well, let's say, I don't think that has to be the central objective. Let's say, welfare, well-being. But if you're giving me this joke, even, I say we in the Verona area, we're working with all the institutions to do the first festival of the third sector in Italy, which we can say will start from Verona, and we hope that it could extend itself to other places, so that all the institutions, the city councils and different institutions within the area, and they're all agreed to follow this objective. So clearly we need to invent the vice minister then. Yeah, that should be the first guest, certainly, even if we might want to do other deeper things. Thank you. Okay. Honourable Bellucci, you have this task then. Good afternoon, everybody. So for me, it's a real pleasure being here. It was proposed to me to come the day before, so I've been here since yesterday. So I thank the meeting for the invitation. I thank Stefano Gheno from the company of Opera, who really wanted to have me here and gave me this opportunity. Which was generative in me for confirmation and even for assecuration, for reassurance. Why? Why? Because we live, and we know this very well, we're living a very difficult time. And as a government today, I'm here in a sense as a representative of the government, and that's an honour and also a duty. We have to govern the honour and duty of governing this nation. So certainly the awareness of the difficulty of governing in this time is deep. It's a time of changes. It's a time of new times that we'd never thought we'd have to live through. Often today the President of the Republic spoke of peace, of that peace which Europe was able for many years to defend, but this peace which isn't now a certainty, because in the heart of Europe, in Ukraine, and Ukraine is Europe, but we have in these months, in these years, we've broken up with the dream that we had of a peace that was guaranteed, that was certain. But not just this. It's also the time of a pandemic, which blows away many circumstances that we could be safe in our own home, in our own cities. It's the time of a technological revolution with a speed that it's beyond the human. And it's the time of an artificial intelligence accompanied by a culture that says that there be fewer places of work, fewer jobs, and that the path, the road is that of distributing the richness, the wealth, which would be generated in artificial intelligence, but distributing wealth that doesn't create work. So it's the time of a crisis of values which we've lived for a long time. So, why was I saying that I find it reassuring? Because aware of the task and the responsibility that we have today as men and women of government to face faced by the gravity of this task, that of governing epical changes within an epical time, the only possible road to manage to sustain this task is that of doing it together. And so, first of all, Father Francesco said, alliance, participation, desire. Alliance, because only through an alliance that's founded on a participation, that of feeling ourselves part, can we think to sustain a task that's so difficult and to be generative. Each of us has spoken a bit of themselves, so I think it's up to me too. And sorry if I'll do taking a couple of seconds. I come from the world of social solidarity, and I wouldn't say third sector because I've never liked that phrase really, of this third sector. In a time in which there's a risk of that your identity could be blown away by numbers. Calling to third sector, calling the world of social solidarity the third sector sounds like not recognizing its identity, which is founded instead on the gift that generates, on subsidiarity, on the hand stretched out to the other, on that fragility which, when you overcome fear, lets you realize that it gives sense to your existence because it becomes generative within you, and it lets you face both your own fragilities. And this has nothing to do with the phrase third sector. In a time of parent one, parent two, of numbers, and if we have the third sector as a thing, compromising the beauty of the world of social subsidiarity, of support, I think it would be very sad. So I grew up a bit by my choice, and also just on the path, a bit for we could say providence, or destiny, or chance. I need to say that the meaning of the participation in work and what has accompanied me in this life, thinking of realizing what I'd never imagined to do. And so I'll add a thing. Father Francesco, desire. Desire, in reality, is the word that contains the meaning of the other. So our society has needs. It's founded on needs and on the satisfaction of needs that are often ephemeral, because in reality we live ever more as if fed by an idea of being perfect consumers. Dependence on a pathological consumerism, and we talked about yesterday, dependence isn't always pathological. So now we only use it as a slogan, perhaps, about cannabis, yes or no. So we are surrounded by an idea of pathological dependence, but dependence isn't always pathological. Depending on love for my neighbour, and so the needs of the other is a word we've said. What do we need? Not of satisfying our needs, but of nourishing the persons, nourishing our dreams. Gabba said, I'd be certain to be able to change my life if I started to say we. Dreams are nourished only within a relationship in which there's someone who believes in you, and so, as if in a mirror, it becomes you believe in yourself. I saw this beautiful exhibition. I thank you, Stefano. Da solo, I'm not enough. On my own, I'm not enough. Nourishing dreams, the sense of us, you do it in a horizontal and vertical way. Those minors, those young people, they discover to not being able to suffice for themselves. The organizations that welcome them discover to not be able to suffice to themselves, but even in the relationship between them, they find something generative. The state, the government, can't suffice to itself. Democracy always requires compromise. If you close yourself in your rooms of the government, and this time is very difficult for another reason, because we arrive with a fragile democracy, with weak governments, with 12 years in which case the executives, the governments have switched every 12 or 18 months, in which they hadn't given or had the time to be able to open that sharing between all the protagonists who are involved in an alliance that's of state, of institutions, civil society, the world of work, private and social and private. We don't many many paces if we don't put ourselves on this path together. I think to have in this a responsibility beyond that, an extra one, because the President of the Council gave me the responsibility. It's the first time that in the story of the Italian Republic that there is a Vice Minister who's been delegated to social policy. Social policy are always been the Cinderella of the attention of public policy. But if we talk about the persons, or centrality of the persons, if we talk about a work that is an instrument of realization of the person, I'm a psychiatrist. Work represents 60% of the existence of a person. We don't say we do, but we say I am. I'm a psychologist. I'm a barrister. I'm a farmer. I'm a plumber. I'm an architect. I'm a shopkeeper, whatever. I'm a businessman. We say I am because our identity is founded on our profession. Without the work, your identity is compromised. Your sense of the I is compromised. So even your human evolution is compromised. And so certainly, and in my ministry, we want to deal with that. So in certain subjects, we need to be calm because they need to be explained, narrated. So I've worked a lot on this, and I'm deeply convinced that we've done, at least for now, the best possible to overcome a logical of nanny state, from artificial intelligence, this thing without work, putting at the center the right of everybody to be socially included and in work terms included, because we can do it, certainly. We'll need to regulate the work market, the job market. We have a big mismatch between supply and demand. So I think there are many businesses that seek workers and few workers available for that because the right sort of professionalities weren't generated. So in politics, in 12 or 18 months, has never managed to govern this to the right systems of first and second grade education, professional things, and this doing professional school is generative of talents. We've seen it in this exhibition, in the measure in which you are aware that the processes need to be governed. And so certainly the risks of artificial intelligence become certainties without a government of certain changes and of these governance of these processes and these changes. So, sorry, I want to try within my time to not take more of it, and so therefore to close. My task today, with that responsibility, is great responsibility of nourishing what some of you have called a more society with the state, not more society and less state, more society with the state. This depends on me a bit, but not only on me. It depends on us. Depends on all of these men and women, of who there are many of you here today, who put themselves on the journey like they do every day of their life, and who participate today in the realization of public policies at the level of the construction of the common good. And Michele, who's the girl who in these last couple of days has accompanied me, she asked me, and so I wanted to make this question, how did you were a psychotherapist, at a certain point you went to be a politician? And I said to her, well, I'm not a politician in any part of my life. I'm a parliamentarian of the last legislature. I was never made a candidate. I never thought to be a candidate in the past years. I'm 51 years old, but I always thought to do politics. I did it when I was a volunteer. I did it when I chose to study psychology, to do my specialization in psychotherapy, and when I was cooperating inside the group of volunteers, international volunteers, and within these various other choices of my life, in the same way that each of you has chosen, whether you have roles or tasks, politics is this: participating in the public thing, the res publica. So it asks for a sacrifice, for effort, for work. It asks for effort, but like this you can be gratified for having meaning in your life. So somebody taught me that life isn't just lived, but it is thought about and then dedicated. And so to me, the meeting these 2 years has helped me to continue to reflect and to think about how I'd like to dedicate my life. And so I felt I'm really, really deeply grateful for this opportunity, for these days.
Credo che abbiamo
I think we've got a lot of things, a lot of points for reflection, and I certainly, for the role that I cover within associations, I've got a lot to reflect on. So this last definition of politics, within experience, you could say, an experiential politics, not a theoretical one. Father Francesco might correct me, but I think that is maybe already in the magisterium of the Church to say that politics is a high form of charity. And I think that this can help us, and all of us, to put things in the right perspective. The other thing I'd like to pause on for a second is this idea of alliance, these ideas of the fact that we need necessarily to work together, that you construct only together, for us has always been at the origin of the attention given to subsidiarity. For many years, we've said more society and less state, but now it's the time for alliance, for a new alliance. And Professor Vittadini said at a meeting yesterday, he's the president of the Foundation for Subsidiarity, which is he's one of the biggest exponents of the culture of subsidiarity and also of its scientific theory. He said exactly this: now we need more society and more state because we need to learn that you can win only together. We can overcome. This is what will let us overcome that logic, which maybe of the 20th century, and start again in a clearly complex world. Thank you, all of you. But hang on, don't clap yet, because to do this we need to invest. And so the meeting, I believe we're all in agreement here, is a great opportunity for promoting this alliance. And so we need to sustain it. And I don't sustain it just the sponsors, but each of us can sustain the meeting. You'll see around the meeting these spots called Dona Ora with the red heart. So right, each of us do our part, and we can do it in a way that in 2024 it'll be even more beautiful, the meeting in Rimini. Thank you all.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale, non è un'idea, innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire, non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli.
Sosteniamo le donne e gli uomini impegnati nello sviluppo delle imprese e delle attività professionali, con il desiderio di affrontare le sfide imprenditoriali, sociali e culturali del nostro tempo, contribuendo al bene comune. Compagnia delle Opere. Un criterio ideale. Un'amicizia operativa. Cdo.org.
10 racconti di solidarietà e aiuto concreto. Storie ricche d'amore, riscatto, coraggio e cura. Storie di persone che donano e che ispirano a costruire una società inclusiva. Una mano a chi sostiene. Storie.